Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week. Okay, we are recording, and we are not almost done the podcast. I know nothing about Hope still.
Like, I just really
you've done a terrible job of doing anything besides, so last time I was looking for someone, he was like, I might know someone. And I go, somebody else gave me Hope. He goes, Hope is really great. I'm like, you suck. Like, where?
There's only so much capacity that I can put into here. I forget things.
There's so many things going on in Kenny's brain.
There's too much stuff going on.
I'm there for
pasta. Hope is full of pasta. That's the problem, Pasta.
That's the best thing to have there, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
If you're tuning in, we have Hope Aylen. Is that right?
Aylen, but correct it. That's clear enough.
Hope Aylen.
Better than alien. People called me alien. So.
She's not an alien. But Hope Aylen, and she is a graphic designer, and we thought we'd have her on.
Out of this world.
Sorry, you're going to correct me because you'll do the intro, but we thought we'd bring her on because recently I've been on the search for someone who could help us with product design, packaging design, with all those sort of things that make people crazy. And she's kind of got talent extraordinaire. And if you're asking in the industry, Hope's name comes up usually first three names ish is kind of where Hope pops up. So if you're on the West Coast, it's even more, but cross country, Hope pops up a lot. So we thought, what a great moment to bring someone on who has skills that everybody needs.
Everybody in CPG does, for sure.
Well, look, there's only so many things you can do in Canva, and most of it you can't print out of Canva. So sorry for anyone who thinks that Canva skills means that you can design packages, because you can't.
No, I thought it did, because I thought I did a pretty good job, but apparently not.
Hope's like the number of half-baked things that I get out of Canva probably helps me design, but that's it,
The amount of clients that have started off with Canva, I think it's a good thing to start off with, and then you need to kind of
you got to let it go. There's definitely a point where you got to jump ship.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to shut up. The next 45 minutes is yours. We'd love it if you introduce yourself and then tell us where you come from, how you got here, because the skills you have are pretty amazing, and you've acquired them over covering some pretty amazing brands, looking at your portfolio, but all of that stuff, where you got to.
Yeah, and maybe even we'll get to toward the end, is even letting, because we get a lot of brands that listen, obviously, is maybe things that they might come to you better equipped with, or do you know what I mean? Because you know what it's like. Everybody's got the idea. There's things they need to come to you with for you to do that much better a job for them. And I think sometimes they miss that. So
of course.
Well, somewhere in there, we're going to ask you about how a founder lets you peer into their head so you can see exactly what they're dreaming.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Some founders aren't so good at letting me peer into their heads, but some are. But
I'm sure you got a medieval device with like a little hammer and something.
Sure, there's something there.
Yeah. Well, so my name is Hope, and I own a company called Design for Hope. And essentially, I kind of really focus on food, drink, food, beverage, and wellness brands, essentially. And and I've kind of helped quite a few of the small brands kind of get started. My background is basically, you probably can tell, I'm originally from the UK, got an English accent. Shocker.
Didn't know this.
Not at all.
It's so Canadian now, right?
You all same.
Yeah. I've been here now 5-6 years, something like that. Came over here, started working in some sort of design companies, helping them with their packaging, and then decided to go out and do it by myself, which I was doing in the UK, but to get permanent residency here because I love this country so much, I decided to kind of like work my way to that position. And now, I own Design for Hope, where I kind of focus on, food, beverage, and wellness brands, and help small businesses become have their dreams become more of a reality, essentially.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. You have your PR?
Yeah, I got my PR. Hopefully applying for my Canadian citizenship very soon as well, which I can do now.
Wow.
So
full tilt.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm loving Vancouver. So I am big fan. You can't beat this city really when you have like beaches, mountains, and like a city all in one. So
yeah,
you do it all in a day.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, so I help lots of, as you were kind of like mentioning, like founders and getting inside their sort of brain. I kind of start this by doing like what I call brand strategy sessions with clients. And that looks at what their like brand heart is. So what their, purpose is, and why they basically started up their company and what their vision was originally and what their mission is. And I help them kind of work all those sort of aspects out about their brand to help build who they are. Because a lot of the clients that do come to me, they don't actually have this groundwork. And this groundwork is really fundamental to that brand. It's like almost like a blueprint of like your company. And it's really important to make sure that you know what your vision is, your mission is, your values are as a brand. Because if you don't know, how are your customers supposed to know? And they're the people you're meant to be convincing to buy your product. So that's what I like to start with, is looking at that, looking at competitors as well in the market. So who they're against and what they're up facing against. So anything that I do create for them, whether that is a brand logo or brand packaging or just like posters or any sort of design, I can make sure that I'm tackling all the USPs for their brand that is against their competitors, essentially. And then part of that brand strategy is also looking at like customer personas and developing that. So looking at different target groups that they would probably be sort of focusing on mainly. And then also brand voice as well. So what you sound like to your customers and how you want to be perceived by your customers. So that really helps me understand, and also helps my client understand who they are. Because as I said, a lot of the time they actually don't necessarily know all these things about their brand. So it really helps open up their mind to know more about themselves. As well as like helping me along this design journey that I have to take them through.
It's pretty it's pretty comprehensive. I love it.
A little more comprehensive than I thought it would be.
It's an interesting conversation, so the parts that we didn't record or I hadn't hit record was around, really getting into founders' heads, right? Because I think articulating what is in your head is a difficult process. It sounds like you've just got a lot of experience, like trying to course correct for moments where somebody uses some words, but then you realize that what's actually in their brains isn't what they said at all.
Yeah.
It's a really clever way to do it, though, because I've dealt with designers over the years, and I mean, they'll always ask sort of, maybe kind of like, who do you think you are? I don't think everybody's really gone through sort of the detail that you're talking about, which is sort of critical. And again, like, people don't have to get scared when you're asking like your vision, your mission. You don't have to save the planet. You don't have to do like, it could, like we have the tea, for example, that we do, the mission and vision is, I hope people just really enjoy a really nice cup of tea with friends and family. And you know what the side benefit is? It's bagless, so hopefully there's a little less waste that goes through the system. It's nothing massively ethereal. It's just, we just want to have a good cup of tea. But I think that changes then potentially how you go in and design.
We should talk about that, because I have a slightly different vision.
That's great. See, already we just finished talking about this. We're not on the same page half the time.
Hope is like, I got it. I write that down. I'll come back after the podcast. You guys need some help. Like,
you're doing the next one. Bottom line, because apparently we don't know what we're doing. So you're doing the next one.
Oh dear. And that's the problem also, having many founders in a company, is like there's always going to be opposing views of like, you both might not agree on the directions. So it's coming to alignment on that as well.
I still think it's interesting that a designer would go and do that, because I honestly I don't typically envision that being the place. I think a lot of times what I've seen over the years is, you bring them an idea, and what they do, they just work off the idea without really. I mean, what you're doing is offering the true service, because what you bring me and then what you tell me could change the design. Like it's a 180.
Yeah. So I've worked in like many advertising agencies before I decided to kind of do this myself. Worked in loads of advertising agencies, and normally in an advertising agency, you'd have someone that does all this groundwork with the brand strategy,
Right.
and look into that, and then that would be presented to a designer. So a designer isn't normally used to kind of doing all this that I do beforehand.
Yeah.
But I do find it an essential thing, because it will just save time in the long run, because I'm creating multiple concepts. I could make multiple concepts that don't actually speak to what the client is actually thinking, and until I do groundwork with them, I'm essentially wasting my time just designing stuff that I don't know who I'm designing for, or what I'm designing for, what the client really feels. So it's an extremely integral part, and not only for my time and the client's time, but to make sure that it speaks to the consumer.
Can we let's go a little bit, like, so do you mind, because I think there's also, when we start talking to designers, right, like when everyone has a different perception, it's a little like a marketer is, everyone has a different perception of what folks do. Like, do you mind kind of like talking a little bit about what kinds of things you do, and even where you find people have the most demand for what you do?
Yeah, so like, as I said, I kind of start with this brand strategy thing with any sort of brand that I kind of like speak to and take on. And it might be that they do have some of these elements already, so I do ask them to provide me those elements if they feel that they've had it covered. And if I find that there's any gaps, we can fill those gaps in. And then it's essentially like I do packaging design, whether that is pouches, we got tubs, we've got cardboard things, like all those sort of elements that you kind of need as a brand. It might be that they don't actually have a brand logo or need a brand refresh. So it might be that they started, as we briefly mentioned earlier, on Canva. They might have created a very slapdash logo that they put together.
Pretty skookum, apparently. Pretty skookum.
And then they realize, oh, I can't actually trademark this because Canva owns it. Oh, okay. I maybe get a designer to kind of help me now with this next stage. So a lot of companies either come to me.
Sorry, can you just pause there for 1 minute?
Hit rewind.
Because I think very few people understand what you just said about Canva.
Yeah, rewind.
There's so many of us, right? There's so many of us that are huge fans, because it really does. Like, there were a lot of things that I could never do before that I really don't have skills for. So, like, I can go into Illustrator, but you really don't want me in there. Like, God help you if I'm in there doing your stuff for you. But you said something about Canva that I don't think a lot of people understand.
About trademarking. So with logos, if you've done a logo in Canva, essentially Canva owns that, because you've used elements that Canva have put together as a resource for you. So you essentially can't actually own that as a logo and trademark that and register it. Because it's not yours, it's not your property. However, obviously you can do all the other little things that you want to do in Canva, but obviously you don't necessarily need to trademark them. So it is good for like putting together quick social media things and posts like that. So I think it does have its place in, especially for small businesses. And I don't shun small businesses using it, because I think it is a great tool to be able to bring them to that next level, to when they are ready to have a designer. And you need to start somewhere, right? And not everyone can afford to have a designer straight away. So I think it does have its place. But when it comes to the more sort of high bar things, logos, packaging, it's just not equipped to kind of handle those sort of elements. And
it's also dangerous. I mean, for the
Look at
owner.
look at the
whenever I
panic
get
on Kenny's
trademark-
face now. Kenny's like,
Well, because I didn't. Well, I honestly, I didn't know that. Haven't done our logo in there anyway. But my thing would have been is that it doesn't matter where I do it per se because it's my logo. I'm the one that designed it. I use your elements. No different than if I did it with you. You're not you can't stop my trademarking. I paid you to do. I guess. Well.
Yeah, if you look in the terms and conditions, hidden away in a.
Who reads those?
Exactly, and that's where a lot of people have a downfall. Like people have come to me, and I always, that was one of the questions that I do ask is like, where did you create your logo? Who's done it? That sort of thing, because I just want to make sure that whatever I'm putting necessarily, if they're kind of wanting to use their logo on my packaging, that it's something that they realize, what the situation is with their logo.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Does that apply with, I guess, most of the like if you go to those logo sites online and design your own logo, same sort of rules? Because I mean, people do this all the time.
Yeah, people do it all the time. I'm not sure about other sites where you can do that, but I just know this is a fact from Canva. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I interrupted you because you were going, but I just thought that was a key thing.
No, that's very interesting and dangerous.
A lot of people really understand, right? Is you like, it's almost like anything that you consider that might be intellectual property or anything that is unique to you. Canva is a great crutch, but it's the wrong place for something. You want a clear service agreement with someone who can build that for you, right? So yeah.
And I think it's just a good point when you're speaking about your logo as well. It's so important. It's such a important piece of your brand identity that it's best just to get someone creative to kind of jump on it anyway, regardless of how talented you might be on Canva. I think it's really, really important to kind of get someone kind of like to help you, because I don't know about you, but like designing my own logo, I find that very difficult because it's personal to me. So if a client is designing their own thing, I think it's like never ending like amount of changes, and are you ever going to be really happy with it, and are you really sure that it speaks to your consumer? So I think it's really good to get outside perspective regardless. So
I think you're right, and I think the other things in there that someone experienced would be able to tell you. Like, you think of how many of us build square logos, right? That you kind of go square, or it's got a round thing, right? And then you go, this looks awesome, until you try and put it on something landscape or a banner, and you're like, it doesn't. Now what do I do? Like, so there's so many, like, I would call them like shape relationships that I don't know. Like, it's one of those things about Canva that nobody can fix that, right? Is I don't understand until I throw it on the page, and then like my daughter's an artist, right? So, and she would come over and go, Dad, what are you doing? Like, you're not supposed to use those things together. I'm like, I don't know. I just, like, Canva said I can do it, so I threw it together, right? Like, those are things that I feel like you need someone who understands, that can actually see things and play it out 8 steps, because I wouldn't know until I'm trying to jam it in on a letterhead or something to go, oh no, I picked this all wrong. It's in all my brand fundamentals, but it's wrong, right? Like, this is not the thing we need, right? So,
that's the thing with logos. I like to make sure that I make the logos useful, like, vertical, portrait, make sure that it passes what I like to call the squint test, which is if it goes very small, are you still able to work out what the brand is? So things like social media icons. So like something where it's smaller, you don't want to be able to like try and be reading something. So you need to create an icon or a logo that's going to kind of work, for that, a symbol essentially. So I like to make sure that I have all those different sort of like types of logos that are going to work for all these different situations. Whereas a lot of clients go in and go, okay, I'm going to make one logo. It might just be a landscape one. And then they come into these problems later on. They're like, oh, it doesn't work on white, or it doesn't work on black, or it doesn't work when I go really small, or, only works when it's quite large on my screen. So, yeah.
But you find, I'm just curious now, right, that a good chunk of the challenge might be, you can answer this because I want to know how you dance around this anyway, is that, do you find that it's amazing how many design experts are out there who don't know how to hold a pencil properly or don't know how to design? Do you know what I mean? Like, founders come to you at they know, because they know everything, right? I mean, it's just, this has to work because In their head, that's the way it is, and they don't get the fundamentals to what you're saying, Phil, and both of you. The fundamentals of design.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like to explain to clients before we kind of like we have a kickoff meeting, is explaining to them, what I'm going to produce for them and why I'm producing these things for them. So, for example, with the logos, it's like why I'm going to be doing a vertical version, a portrait version, a symbol version, and what making sure that it works when it's like in all black, making sure it works when it's on all white. So they have all these use cases that they're going to need it.
Right.
I think they just don't realize that that's something that they need. They think they just need one form of logo and that's it. And then until they realize and then they see it in all its different forms, they're like, oh, wow, okay. And then this could actually be used and turned into a pattern, this icon. It could be brought out even further out of being just a logo. It's making it into an identity. It's building out even further. So yeah, seeing the scope of it and how, where it can go. It just like makes the client realize something. Oh, wow, this is more than I thought it was.
Yeah, because I think people forget that at times your logo is probably going to be collateral for someone else's marketing materials. So you've got a lovely, green logo, and the company you're going to has got a lovely green background, and you haven't done a reverse image or like a reverse colors or anything. And green on green, just it's going to be like a green screen. You're not going to see shit.
Yeah.
Have you thought of that? Have you thought of the colors you're choosing? Do they mute out? Can you do a black and white? If you do a black and white, does it look as good in black and white as it did in full color, so to speak? Again, some stuff is not colored. It's black and white.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's actually how I start when I do my logos. My first round of logos that I show, I don't introduce any color at all. I show it on black and white, and the reason being many reasons is that we want to make sure that the form of it looks good as it is, and you like the form of it. But also introducing color can also confuse clients sometimes, because it might be that they say they don't like it, but it's not because of the form and the structure of it, but it's because I didn't choose the right red.
Right. Pantone's off, just that.
Yeah.
Which probably means nothing at the end of the day outside of a feeling in person, which is great. No issue. It's a logo, but understanding that the fundamentals need to be there.
Yeah. So yeah, always start in black and white and then expand from there. And we can introduce colors once we've kind of got the form that we like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's
I really love it. Okay, so logos is part of your like yes. One bit of it. You've got packaging in your experience. What other? Maybe ask differently. What are the funnest parts of what you do?
Oh,
like what parts do you love the most?
I would say the concepting stage of anything that I kind of do, giving multiple concepts and then actually showcasing that to clients is what brings me so much joy. Not only just because of the creative part of like kind of developing all these different versions that speak to their consumer, but it's actually then presenting it and seeing the client's face light up when I go through each concept, and then they're like, wow, oh, and then in the next version, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. And it's just seeing that like excitement. And then always I don't know which one to pick. This is too hard. You've made it too hard for me.
That's amazing.
Is
that's
part
okay too.
But yeah, the conceptual stage for me is the best part. And once I get the brand strategy done, that's not as exciting, but it's the getting onto the concepts and like kind of giving them multiple options that they can just like get lost in.
Right.
I like that.
And I'm assuming that the flip side is the flip side. You present 10 things and nothing sticks.
Well, so I don't know.
That happen?
So I tend to, for example, with logos or packaging, or whether it's like an advert design, I provide around 3 to 4, potentially sometimes more, but I don't like to kind of be too overwhelming with the choice.
I won't pick then. It's too much selection.
It's too much choice. So yeah, I try and narrow it down. Even if I've done like multiple versions, I pick the best of the best that I think that truly represent that brand.
Right.
not overwhelm them. And then it's a selection process, and it might be that it's like, oh, I love concept 4 and also I love concept 1, what can we do to merge those? And that's okay, we can kind of talk about that, and it's kind of like bringing elements of each of them that they might like together and seeing how that works as well.
I guess because you do so much homework on the front end too, like when you're asking all the questions about brand identity and who you're talking to, et cetera, I guess you weed out, probably give them a chance to weed out some of the periphery too, because they probably never thought of it. Probably helps them go down a cleaner path.
Definitely. I've not really come across too many problems where the clients have been like, oh, I don't know about any of them, because we have done that brand strategy at the beginning, so it makes sense to them of why we're going down that way. And I just get to know the client as well, and also just like making it really clear to them that they might not be their target audience, so try not to be too cynical on the design and go, okay, what would your target audience like?
Yeah, it's not for you right now. We're talking about how's the consumer going to perceive this.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're just talking madness. I have no, like, what? Oh, come on.
You know what? Though,
that's tough. You know, like,
that's tough because you got to try to get someone out of their own head.
Yeah,
like that's why, like, I'm always amazed at designers
so much.
Like,
and I think that's what the personas help with. So, like, when I develop these personas and these target bucket groups, I can go, oh, what, you know, Sally and Mike that we created. Sally and Mike will bloody love this design. So this is going to stop Sally and Mike in the shop, and they're going to pick this up because Sally and Mike. This speaks to Sally and Mike. It might not speak to you, Nigel, but it speaks to Sally and Mike.
Right.
But generally, most of the time, because my clients are they're passionate about their product. Normally, they do fit into one of their target customer groups. So it's not normally somebody so opposing that, you know, because they create this product, so they have a passion for it. So they must fit into the category of wanting this product themselves at some point. So they do tend to fit into one of the persona groups. So something will speak to them for sure.
Yeah. I just find it to be such an interesting part of it, just because, I mean, I've been around a lot of product changes and packaging, and then I shit you not, it's always the same. It's, you know, there's 10 people in the room and there's 11 opinions. And I just always feel for the designers. I'm thinking, God, guys, if you would just listen. I mean, the reason they do design is because they understand the whole flow of how this is going to look down the road. You're looking at one room in the house and painting it.
Yeah.
It's not how you paint a house. It's gotta flow.
Respectfully, I think it's much worse than that. Like I think it's like you built a gingerbread house, and then you think you can build the whole house, right?
Yeah, I did that. You know,
it's what it feels like. Right? You're going, no, like what were you going to use icing sugar for the whole house? Like, where are you getting a gumdrop that big, right? Like, it's not a thing. And the gumdrop's not to code. Like, where are we going to put that, right? Like,
who's making that gumdrop?
That's but that, I always say to my clients as well when I do show them concepts is that, you know, the whole too many cooks can, you know, spoil, you know.
It definitely does. I mean, I've seen it. You've seen it.
Yeah. And that's what I tell them. So I say, like, feel free to share with people that you're close to, but obviously bear in mind you need to make sure that they are your target audience. And, you know, I always say to make note of how they actually feel in that moment when I am presenting the concepts of whatever it is. Because when they involve more people, that's when they start to question and doubt their own belief of what they first thought when they see the concept.
Totally.
So I always like, be careful. Just be careful. Too many people, problem.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are there brands that you've worked with that you've really loved along the way, or maybe not brands? I'm trying to ask you a question that doesn't put you on the spot.
Look not for the answer specifically.
No, but are there design challenges that you've come up against that you've had a lot of fun kind of solving for, or any unique ones that kind of, you know, because I feel like every brand thinks that they have a unique design. You kind of go, look, there's only so many packages in the world. There's only so many, like, so, but is there anything that you kind of go, something that I've worked on that I really love?
Well, I was saying generally just working on Canadian packaging is a challenge in itself. because of having to include.
This is not a test for citizenship, so I just, I mean, we can make sure
we
on that
forward
part.
this. You can't criticize the 2 language rules. It's too much on our packaging. It's so hard to do.
Yeah, it's extremely hard. And there's been times when I start designing and going, oh, wow, this is looking great. And then I'm like, I've forgotten to include the French. That's why it's looking so great.
Yeah.
Because I have so much space. So yeah, I would say like the challenge for me mostly is working out, especially when it comes to small little labels around like glass jars and things like that, is working out how can I best utilize this space, but also including, all the legality that you need to keep Canadian the same size and all that sort of stuff. And also fitting all the functional information and like, the NFTs to be the correct sizing and the ingredients to be all the correct sizing, following all those rules. I'd say that is probably the most challenging thing. But also in a way, I weirdly enjoy it, because once I've cracked it and I'm like, yes, I've managed to fit all this on and it looks good still. That is great.
Sure.
So yeah.
Go ahead to finish up.
Yeah, no, that's it pretty much. It's just like, is the French and English.
In terms of nutritional panel, nutritional fact tables. So, because this always gets because I find they spend so much time on the logo, so much time picking the color, and forgetting, like you said, first off, 2 languages, all the stuff you should have on it, and then the nutritional fact panel seems to be the last thing they think of, and you're thinking, guys, you kind of like, have you done all the work you needed to do to get that actually on there properly? And is all your data correct? So like, what part do you walk them through? Just the physical mechanics of it, or do you help them, direct them to people who can maybe just verify? Or
he's asking if you save clients from
What's
themselves. Kenny's asking if you save clients from themselves on nutritional panels.
That's pretty much it. Just a hypothetical question.
So I don't obviously help necessarily with the nutritional fact side of things, but I do know people that I can advise they go and speak to kind of like work out if they are literally clueless about that sort of side of their business. And also when it comes to like making sure that it's like the whole label and the package is actually like signed off, and they're not going to get called up by anybody saying, oh, your ingredients isn't on a white box, it needs to be on a white box. Why is your ingredients not on a white box? I have people that I can send them to get their labels and boxes reviewed to make sure that it's all compliant, essentially. I know some of the rules and the basic rules and the majority of the rules, but I don't legally say that this is 100% compliant. But I do have people that I can advise you go and speak to.
It's important because, in all honesty, it's typically a lot of times, the reason I ask that, because a lot of people will go into it with really not knowing any of it, right? So at least you hope you get to your designer, whether your designer knows or not, at least they can help direct you to, listen, this is the person you check for this part. This is the person you check with that part. Because otherwise you're left in a spot thinking, well, that's great. Yeah. Now what do I do? I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask.
And I think a lot of clients that I've had to like either rework their packaging, or they've come to me not knowing things, is that they've spoken to designers who aren't necessarily packaging designers, and they're great designers in themselves, but I think a packaging designer needs so much more knowledge to know what you should and shouldn't be able to do, before sending it off to somebody to get like compliancy checks. So it's really important to work with a packaging designer that has experience in that, rather than just a designer generally, because it takes more knowledge to know what to do when it comes to
I guess that's where I was going. I just wonder how many people actually come prepared with that, or just really think it all the way through. I'm assuming they get to you. You're obviously the type that's, because you go back to the beginning, the fundamentals, you're probably asking a lot of that. Send them away, they get their shit together, then come back.
Yeah, so when I kind of start, I kind of list out, all the stuff that I'm going to need from them. And it might be that I say, for now, I can put placeholder things in our packaging so we can kind of see where the positioning is going to be. And you can provide me this in a later date, so they can work on that while I'm working on the creative side of things. yeah, they eventually get it to me, but it's not always. They're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed this, or I didn't realize this needed to go on there. Okay, great, good to know.
Okay.
How does one pick someone to help? Because packaging design is treacherous, period, right? We know, I don't know how many brands are like, we fucked up the packaging. I got all this packaging lying around, because you don't do 100 bag runs. Everything's 5,000, 10,000, right? Like, so if a brand is looking, do you have some advice around like what, besides everybody should call Hope? Okay, so she didn't pay us for that, but you should call Hope. If you haven't figured that out,
seriously, save yourself the time.
Yeah, but if Hope isn't available, what do you look for in like because there are lots of designers. I'm using air quotes because our podcast listeners won't be able to see that, but there are lots of air quote designers out there. What is it that you look for in a packaging person? Because they need to know all sorts of things around like dye lines and, like vector images, like all these things that you kind of go, what? Like what? I made it on Canva. Like, why can't you print it?
Yeah. I think it's just like knowing someone that like knows how to work with printers, so knows how to set things up for print. I think it's really important. So it's not necessarily, you don't want to work with a digital graphic designer, because like I do digital design as well. But you need to make sure that they're quite fluent in print and know, all the different printing techniques, because again, they could introduce not print alternatives that you hadn't even thought about. Like you can include foiling if you want to kind of like jazz your packaging up a little bit, or you might want to include some embossing, which helps, bring a more attractive eye to your packaging. So knowing someone that at a designer level and not necessarily just at the print side level of who they can advise and advance your packaging even further, I think really important. And knowing how to set it up all for print, so you're not going to have back and forth with the printers saying this is not a file I can use, I need to have bleed on my design, you need to have it on separate layers, you need to have the text needs to be outlined, all the images are like rasterized, so I can't use them. So knowing how to set things up for print, I think, is really important. So asking the right questions to your designer to say, do you know how to for print? What would you print? And do you know any printers that you work with specifically as well? I think is an important question to ask, because I have a roster of different printers that I can go to and turn to, that I know I can ask questions to, and that I have relationships with. So if your designer has relationships with printers, that they know how to set up things for print, essentially.
I don't think people think of that though, Hope. I think to Phil's point is like, the 5 top questions would be nice one day to kind of just have, these are the things you need to ask. Yeah. I think people just go to design and just think, oh, I got to design, and not realizing half the things you just said.
Yeah, no, I've had a client come to me and say, I didn't realize I needed a packaging designer. I've used this designer that I've used who created my logo. And then when it came to the packaging, everything wasn't working and wasn't right. And I was like, it's a different set of skills.
It's a different animal.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think that's, because like it or not, there are kind of a million ways to find people that may or may not have the skills, right? So, I mean, you go onto something like Upwork, you submit a project, you probably get 30, 40 people who show up, right? But there's almost, unless you actually understand, like part of the problem is you go to print labels, right? And so the people who print your labels will have all these instructions for you, right? Half of them, the ordinary person doesn't understand, right?
Okay.
If you're in marketing, you understand the terms, but you still don't really understand, right? And then you go to a designer, and then you kind of like, an air quotes designer, and they go, oh yeah, no problem. You're like, but do you really know? Like how do I tell? Like 38 people, I could go, if I go one by one, this will take a long time. And then 2 is I still don't know if I'm actually getting someone with skills, right? Like, because in the end of the day, what I really need is I need great designs, but I also need someone who isn't going to cost me $10,000-$15,000 because I got the print wrong, because I didn't anticipate what I was going to get, right? Because I don't know, so I think your advice is really helpful, particularly with small business, because we're, like a bad print run could really screw.
We just don't know, Phil. Most just don't know. I went to the designer that designed the packaging. Well, they should know everything. I know there's vector files. Don't ask me what a vector file is. I don't really care. But you know what I mean? I just my designer knows all this.
How do you know that doesn't hurt her feelings? Like, how can you say something like that?
Because I know Hope, and she knows that I wouldn't care because I would know she knows. I don't need to know. That's her job.
Yeah.
I trust her. She knows all the things I'm not going to know. And that list is long.
And I think I also, to add to that, I think the problem is that it's good to, with Upwork, for example, is that you don't know the designer, you don't know necessarily anyone that's used them. So a lot of my clients have come through oh, I saw you did this person, so now I have that trust already. So it's maybe going and finding, or speaking to the people that or in a commissary kitchen with, or somebody else that has launched a brand, and asking who did your packaging, because I love your packaging and I need a trusted designer. Going on Upwork, you don't know them. You don't know
much of anything. You really don't. You don't.
And I've had so funny. I've had, when I was working in the UK, I was working at this one company, and someone applied for a job with my work in their portfolio.
Oh, that was nice of them.
What?
Yeah. So somebody
hang on. What did they think of your work?
I think there's a compliment somewhere in there.
So basically, you just don't. What my point is you can't trust that someone's work is actually their work.
Right.
Somebody was applying for the job that I was working at, with my
your
work.
work.
Yeah. I had someone from HR come to me and say, "Hope, isn't this yours?" I'm like, "Yes, that's mine." That's bizarre that they're using my work in their portfolio.
In the same building for the same thing. That's interesting. Not very bright.
Or not the moment you go, son of a bitch, I told that guy never to apply here because I work here. I already paid him for these designs. What the?
You've been spoiled. No.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I just think on Upwork, anybody can grab imagery off, other people's websites and just go, yeah, this is me. But having someone that locally, or somebody else who's worked with a designer before, that's probably the best way to find the right person. I
think referrals on this side are really important.
Yeah,
I think you talk to people, and because there's really, as many designers are out there, there's not a lot that really specialize in packaging, all the way through. I know they might know components of it, and they might be really good with certain parts, but knowing printers to use, understanding what you said before on the foiling and embossing could change a design. What do you want to do? If you want to gussy this up or whatever, you may want to get ahead of it before you have to go change design or rework something, because it could have been thought of. You needed to ask the right person.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Actually, I have a funny story about that. I went on to LinkedIn to look for some designers, right? And I was looking. This was before Kenny forgot to mention you, and I got your name.
I like how I got blamed on that. I was waiting for him to. I was going to say to him, I'm just saying.
I had to go do my own work. He's my partner and everything. But
this is last week. He's a fibber. Bullshit.
but anyway, so I found somebody who's connected to 7 or 8 people that I knew. So I was like, all right. But then I was like, okay, I'm just going to shoot some notes out and go, hey, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. And it was really funny because, to your point is, and so I didn't wind up working with the designer at all, right? I just needed a couple of names in case I needed to call, right? And but as soon as I started asking around, they're all like, actually, no, we know them through a whole bunch of people, but I've never worked with them. Here's my designer, right? And so everyone had one in their back pocket, but the one that everybody's connected to on LinkedIn.
Nobody uses.
Nobody work with, right? And I was like,
yeah, they're
like,
just
and
a
then, like,
serial.
right? Like, so, I don't know, like maybe really great, but I kind of went, you're connected to 7 or 8 people that I'm connected to, and nobody has experience with you. I'm not going to be the first, right? Like
Yeah.
like really funny. Okay. I really love. I'm so glad we had this conversation because I feel better about all the things that I don't know anything about, actually.
Yeah, that much smarter.
Yeah.
Glad. No, it's been great chatting with you guys.
So whenever we can afford a designer, then we know we can go to Hope because we don't have to have that list of questions that I've already forgotten what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So that just made it that much easier. I don't have to think anymore, which I really like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally good with the not thinking part.
The whole point of really working with somebody like me is that you don't have to think. It's taking a weight off a business person's shoulders because they've got so many other things they're juggling. That the creative side is something that you want to just hand over to somebody else and go, I don't have to worry about this until they come to me with concepts, and that's an exciting, fun part. And yes, I'll have that. Yes, I'll have that.
That's what it is, Hope. That was the reason I asked you before. I really do find that it's amazing when you talk to people that there are so many expert designers out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're just all experts. They have it all down pat. Everybody knows how to design the perfect package.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah. Even you, Kenny, on Canva, right?
100%. Look at that. I can do anything.
Mm-hmm. Let's go into business together, Kenny. Come on, let's do this.
I'd go with you, baby. You watch my Canva skills. You got to be careful. Be careful.
Run away.
No, I would just rather refer people to you. I'm good at that. I can do that all day.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely the one who likes to try to find. I like using people who know what the hell they're doing. I don't want to learn it. I just want someone to hopefully crack my head open and say, okay, I understand what you want. I get it. And just be gone. And just tell me when you're ready for me to look at stuff and I'm good to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's just the way to do it. I mean, it's not my skill set. I mean, I like design and I know what I find appealing is probably because it was designed well, but don't ask me to do it.
Yeah.
How do I know?
No.
I'm not that person, right?
Definitely not. Yeah.
No, but I think people got to understand that it's a weakness for most of us. Get it out of your head that you know design. You don't know shit. Right? Just get it out of your head. Go to somebody, talk, and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Appreciate that.
Okay. We are almost out of time. If people want to find you, where do they find you?
They can find me at www.designfulhope.com. And then also Designful Hope on Instagram as well. So yeah, it's design and then FUL and then hope. So yeah, you can just type that into Google. I'll pop up as well, so you can find me on there.
Yeah.
Very cool.
No. We'll drop the links in the episode notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming on. I'm really glad you did this.
We really appreciate it. We're glad.
I liked working with you in the past. So I mean, I think I'm glad you did this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I love. Thanks for inviting me. It's awesome to be part of this. Obviously, I've listened to your podcast numerous times. So
thank you. We it's something that we're doing is we're trying to, the community has been really important to us, and I think what we're trying to do is make sure that Kenny and I do it in real life as we connect people that we think are amazing, right? And we try and be the connectors there. But I think in the podcast we're starting to do that too. Is we've had a couple of lawyers on, we've had a couple of CFOs on. We think folks that
we've had packaging on, had design
artwork is going to be amazing, right? We're hoping a label person actually comes on, or a label printer. We've got we've got a packaging company who
we've done one. Now we're looking at the other one.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? Like, because we know the ecosystem needs to be there for these folks to make it, and so getting people that we love hopefully helps, right?
I can give you a list of names of people to jump on here as well who would be great to chat to, I think. So,
honestly, they may think
anyone
about it.
specific you're looking for, I can.
If you love them, we love them. It's
If
already.
you can help, just think of it this way: the people that listen to us are a lot of brands, and a lot of people who work with brands who may not be ready to be work with them, and they're always looking for people to direct to.
Yep.
So the more expertise that we can lend, and if they like you, they like. If they want to go with someone else, that's fine. But at least they've got a solid base to work from.
Yeah, totally.
I'm spitballing an idea. You know, it'd be really interesting to do is to bring a couple of partners that you work with that you love. Because I think that would be an interest, because the other part of, like, Kenny and I are fractionals, right? And you work on contracts. And so there's a skill involved when we meet each other in the workplace too. Do you know what I mean? Like people who work temporary, it's a different skill from people who work full time and they have existing conversations, right? Like if I meet you, I have to figure out how to work with you fast, right? Like, because the client who's paying for all this stuff doesn't have time for you and I to go out and have coffee together and then do team building and, so
that'd be pretty fast.
It's pretty quick, right? Like that I meet Hope and Hope meets me, and then we figure out how to work. Maybe Hope doesn't like me at all, but she figures out how to work with me, and right? She'll be like, "I got you," but I don't like you. I wouldn't talk to you on the street, but we're
I'll work with you.
Done, right? Like we're gonna do this design and then get out of here, right? Like, but I think it'd be interesting too is if you have a couple of partners that you really love, that you have good chemistry with, it'd be an interesting conversation to get you together.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Because I think brands would benefit from understanding what, kind of what a good pro conversation sounds like. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I have like some great connections with some photographers. So like having that designer photographer relationship as well is really interesting dynamic. So I'm
thinking it's photographer, design, photographer, printer. Like, because they're so, obviously so intertwined.
I'm really loving this.
No, because it'd be fascinating because I think you can hit all angles because you know what customers are like. We talk to 3 people individually. I'm not understanding that it is really a team play. Like all 3 have to be working
together.
But
the problem is all of them you might have chemistry with as the owner, right? But then what they're thinking is like, wow, they think like me. So, kind of like 2 steps over, it'll be fine, right? And they get together and you're like, what were you thinking? Like these are
this didn't work, man. Like what a train wreck.
They're pros. They'll figure out how to work with each other. Right. But this is not going to be a fun 6 weeks, right? Like this is going to be like, like faster I get this done.
I think there's something in there we could probably play with.
Oh, I love it. I'll figure this out. I'll reach out to you after, and then we'll figure this one out because that would be really.
That'd be fun. That'd be great.
Cool.
But I was gonna say, like, you get on with Kenny. Kenny is very sarcastic, so you're gonna get on with me. So
I think I get on with Kenny. Yeah, I think so. I think I do mostly.
Yeah. A bit English.
Yeah.
Get it? I get the humor.
I love it. Thanks awesome. For coming. This has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will chat with you soon. Phil, you hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye. Hope.
Later. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. What a treat.
Well, I just think because sometimes you need to understand the whole story on design.
Yep.
And I've seen this a billion times. That founder is an expert in design. And I don't know how she does work with that. I like her approach though. I think because if you can get those fundamentals locked down and you can have a true serious conversation, I think then it's a whole, that's the game changer.
Yep.
Right.
But I think even if you don't, I think it's probably what's part of her secret sauce is just being able to spot the moment that it's going to break, right? Yeah. Because there's always a moment, right? Like Absolutely. I don't know who's still listening because we're an hour in or so, but before we started hitting record, we joked about the moment when the the owner asked for a red rose, beautiful blooming red rose on the package, but then when you delivered that, they said, no, that's not what I said at all. I really meant a yellow daisy. And then looked at you like you weren't paying attention at all. All three of us have had those moments. And patience of a saint, right? Like to be able to, figure out what to do in that situation, right? So
yeah, I think with the fact that she takes the time at the beginning to ask all those other questions and really gets sort of the fundamentals of what your brand is about, I think eliminates probably.
Yeah, I think, right, because at least you see where the alarm bells might be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's sort of the trick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, she's very cool. I like her. It was
Okay.
awesome.
That's
okay, buddy. What? Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.